Hello and welcome to Get to Know the HPO, our weekly Facebook live stream. My name is Abigail Richardson-Schulte and I'm composer in residence with the HPO. Now, as usual, please feel free to comment and ask questions along the way. Today, I'm joined by Stefan Kitai, who is an audience favorite at the HPO. He is a percussionist. Welcome, Stefan.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. Now, you're often pretty visible at HPO concerts because you're standing, for one thing. You are at the back, but you're standing. The other thing is people are really drawn to you because you are smiling most of the time. And I can't tell you how many people have come to me and asked me who the happy triangle player is. So, I think people love to see your smile because it looks like you're having such a great time on stage.
Yeah.
So, are you having a great time on stage, and are you aware of smiling?
Am I aware of it? Well, yes, I'm definitely having a great time on stage. It's always fun to play with the orchestra, and I love the music. And I think it's just comes really naturally because I love the music so much that I can't really help it. But it just happens. But I know that my teacher, Jean Normand, once told me, if you smile, it makes the conductor feel, more comfortable that you're confident in what you're doing, and that you can play well. And, just to have a, look like you're having a good experience, and it'll make them feel more comfortable. And so I adopted that as kind of just my basic way of being in the orchestra. And it stuck. I think it really came naturally to me. So now I just smile all the time, no matter what, as long as I'm having a good time.
Unless the music is very sad, of course.
Yeah. Well, not that other people look sad, but it's easier to smile when you're not playing a clarinet or something like that.
True enough. We have a comment here from Elaine Galbraith-Atkins. Hello from rural Dundas. Hello, Elaine. It's great to have you with us again. She says, I remember Stefan from his Brock Festival days as well. He was always smiling then as now and clearly loves what he does. Absolutely. Yeah. That's great.
And when I was in the Broad Festival, that's when I was really learning how to play with the orchestra. And I hadn't had very much orchestral experience before then, just in university and high school orchestras, but not professionally. So that's where my mentor, Jean Normand, told me, really try and smile and look positive so that everyone knows you're having a good experience.
Yeah. Well, just so everybody knows, Jean Normand is our timpanist, our longtime timpanist at the HPO, who is certainly well loved by our audience. So I know people appreciate the percussion section. Now, today is a great opportunity to get to know you more and get beyond the happy triangle player and learn about what else you do in music, because you do quite a lot. But let's start with some background. When did you first pick up percussion, and how did that happen?
Yeah, I first picked up percussion the way maybe most of percussionists start, and that's on drum set. So I started taking drum set lessons when I was, I think, 7 years old in Hamilton. There's a music school next to the Value Village up on the mountain here. And I found it the other day, and I thought, hey, that's the place I started drum lessons at. And I hadn't been back there for a long time. And, I started playing drum set, learning how to do some simple beats with my teacher. But then my family moved to closer to Toronto, and I started taking lessons at the Royal Conservatory Community School in Toronto. Wow. So that's the place where it's combined with the Glenn Gould School, which is kind of the university level conservatory, but there's also a school for children. And my teacher there played drum set, which I was comfortable with, but there was also a room filled with other percussion instruments that I had never seen before. It was crazy. It was kind of like my basement now. And in fact, I have some of the instruments that were in that room. I own them now.
Wow.
So it reminds me of those times. But suddenly I was introduced to this whole world of percussion instruments that I had never seen before. Mm-hmm. And I continued taking lessons there until I went to university. after that.
Now, was it an obvious choice for you to pursue music at university, and where did you go?
Yes, it was a really obvious choice. There was even, I would say I made the decision in grade 7 or something like that. There's absolutely no question about it. I love music so much, and I wasn't really that interested in anything else at the time. And, you know, all through high school, I was in every band and every music thing that I could possibly think of. So it was an easy choice. And since I was taking lessons in Toronto anyway, I wanted to go to the University of Toronto, which was right across the street from, or right across the path, I should say.
Yep, philosopher's walk.
Philosopher's walk, yes. It was right across there from where I had been taking lessons for my whole life almost. And so I just wanted to go there, and I already knew some of the teachers there and the community, so it was an easy choice just to go to U of T for me. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to go anywhere else. A lot of people want to move away in university. I just wanted to stay here.
But you did go to McGill after that, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's right. And then after U of T, I took 2 years off to just study privately. But then after, I wanted to do my master's, and I went to McGill after that. And that was a really interesting experience. Also, it was fantastic, and it was really different from U of T. The type of music that they play there is completely different. It's more geared towards the avant-garde and experimental music. And so I learned a lot. It was very eye-opening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, composers often collaborate so much with percussionists. We love percussionists because they are so collaborative, and often in writing a new piece, a composer will connect with a percussionist to find out perhaps what types of instruments they could use.
We will try pretty much anything. Yeah.
Yeah, there are so many, and often the percussionist knows better, what would be a suitable instrument for the effect we want. So
absolutely,
it is always staggering to me how many instruments percussionists need to play. So let's talk about that for a bit.
Sure.
Have you been in the situation where you have to play a specific instrument for a concert but don't actually own the instrument?
Yes, that happens. It happens all the time, to be honest. And
wow. And what do you do?
Yeah, what do we do? It's a good question. It depends on the circumstance. If it's just one instrument, like one specific small instrument that we need to play, we can usually kind of just mentally figure out what we need to do ahead of time. And then when we have the instrument at the first rehearsal, we'll just try it out and we'll be okay with it. But it gets a lot more complicated when there's bigger instruments or a huge setup of instruments. Like if you have to have a piece where you play glockenspiel and tubular bells and bass drum, and then a bunch of little accessories, and you don't own tubular bells or a bass drum or a bunch of those instruments. And you have to read the score and try and manage changing from one instrument to the next, and you're not you've never been able to try it because you don't own half of the instruments. That's a really challenging one. So we have to do lots of mental practice and then try and survive the first rehearsal. That's the main thing. If we get to the first rehearsal, we're probably going to be okay.
Right. Yeah, it's complicated. I know as a composer myself, I'm always very aware of what instruments, how many instruments somebody is responsible for, if they're shared with another percussionist, how to make that easy. Yeah, I mean, it's very complex. I think people don't realize how much work there is in just getting all of the instruments there. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. But first, I have some questions for you that were submitted in advance from Lynn H.
Okay, hi Lynn. I know Lynn, so.
You know Lynn, okay. Yeah, actually, I just learned that Lynn is the mother of our stage manager, Aaron Hutchinson. So
I may have said that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your questions, Lynn. So she has 3 questions for you, all of them really great. The first one, how do you stay proficient on all auxiliary percussion instruments if there are few scores with all needed?
Yes, that's a good question. For the with the auxiliary percussion instruments, like the standard ones, such as tambourine or triangle or maracas and that kind of thing, they all, at least in my mind, they all fit under kind of one category of instruments. It's just kind of auxiliary percussion, and they can all kind of be played in the same way, even though they're completely different. They look different. The kind of motion of playing them is very similar. You're always just hitting something like this, basically, whether it's with your hand on the tambourine or with the triangle beater on the triangle or just shaking the maracas. It's always the same motion. And that can be transferred to so many different percussion instruments. So it's almost like just playing a drum, basically. And you just transfer it onto those different types of instruments. And otherwise, I would be overwhelmed by having to remember so many different instruments. So I categorize things in my mind in terms of playing techniques and that type of thing.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, her second question is, do you have one percussion instrument you would consider your specialty?
Yes. I probably my specialty is the keyboard percussion instruments. That's actually the reason I think I was able to start playing with the HPO was because there aren't that many people who specialize in keyboard percussion because, like I said before, a lot of us percussionists begin as drum set players, and we just are really, our favorite thing is often just to play drums. And that was the case for me until a certain point when I decided I really was frustrated by learning how to play these keyboard percussion instruments, because for a drummer, it's really difficult to play on these. It's essentially a piano that you hit. It's like a piano keyboard. And I was not comfortable with it for the first few years of, learning it. But then I just changed my mindset and I was determined to learn how to do it well. And I practiced a lot, and it ended up becoming kind of my specialty. And so so that's how I got the opportunity to play with the HPOs, because Jean Normand is, of course, the timpanist in the orchestra, and our friend Ernie Porthouse plays mostly all of the principal percussion parts. And then there's often another player who plays the keyboard percussion parts, like the glockenspiel. It's in almost every concert. And so I got to have that place, essentially. Lots of concerts on keyboards.
Yep. Now, lastly, her last question is, which orchestral piece would be your dream to play, and on which instrument in the percussion family?
My dream is to play all 9 of the Beethoven symphonies on timpani. Yeah, that would be my absolute dream. I've played 4 of them, and so there's 5 left. And when I started studying with Jean Normand, I learned his timpani approach to timpani in a very detailed way. I really, really did my best to play in exactly the same style that he plays with, and he's developed an unbelievably brilliant way of playing. It's the most refined technique I've ever seen on timpani by far. Not that other people aren't good also, but Jean's is particularly special, and he's absolutely brilliant. And I wanted to learn it as perfectly as I could. And so I would love to apply that to the all 9 Beethoven symphonies, because they're just iconic works, and they're the most important pieces for timpanists. We always learn those pieces, and we love playing them.
Yeah, and I didn't know that that timpani was such an interest of yours. I know you had studied with Jean Normand, but timpanists, it seems, once they get their position, they are timpani specialists, right? And,
yes, it's a very specialized. It's like its own world by itself. There's a whole prestige thing with it. There's there's a whole status type of competition within timpani. And a whole culture behind it. Yeah, definitely.
Right. Yeah, well, I know Jean Normand is well loved at the HPO, and I find him really fascinating to watch, actually. I don't usually with timpanists, but there's something that draws me there to him. Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Mhm.
He's fantastic. And
Mhm.
it's such a relaxed technique. It just feels so, it just looks so natural to watch him.
Well, I think, Stefan, it's time to watch you.
Yes.
I know you're going
Yeah.
to give us a little tour of your studio and play a few instruments for us. So take it away.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I'll play a little bit first, and then I'll do a little bit of a tour after that. I'll just swivel the screen so we can see the marimba here. This is my 5-octave marimba. It's something that I'm really, really fortunate to have. And I don't know if you can really see the full thing, but it's very large. And it's kind of like an instrument that's still being developed because there are solo pieces and concertos being written for it. And I hope to write one myself. I'm definitely planning to do that. But it's kind of like the closest percussionists can get to the piano, essentially, being pianists. Because, pianists can play with, 10 fingers. But marimbists, we play with 4 mallets like this. And we hold 2 mallets in each hand. And whoops, this way. And we can play harmony by ourselves. We can play multiple lines at the same time. We can do all of that and have a very wide range of octave range, 5 octaves. It goes down to the lowest note of the cello. So it's all made of wood. It's a beautiful instrument, and I'm excited to see what happens with it in the future. New pieces that are being written, and the whole technique is still being developed, to be honest. So I'm going to play just a short excerpt of a Bach violin sonata transcription. It just shows that you can play with more than one voice at the same time, and I'm going to use 4 sticks to do it. Okay, here we go. Okay. And next, I'm going to play a short etude on the snare drum. And the snare drum is one of those instruments that we all play, and everyone studies it a lot. And it's like the most fundamental instrument in the percussion family. It's the one where all your basic techniques come from, just like playing the tambourine like this and the triangle like this and the maracas like this. We just play the snare drum like this. So we spend a lot of time just learning how to have those basic techniques on the snare drum. So here's the Delecluze etude number 1 from his 12 etudes. Okay, and the last one I'll play is the section called Cool from West Side Story, from the West Side Story suite. This is one that I learned under extreme pressure one summer, and I learned it in just a few days because there was just a time crunch basically to learn it, and I've never forgotten it since then because I was so stressed out. And it's a lot of fun to play, and every time I play it in a concert now, I just remind myself that I don't have to be as stressed because I already learned it. So I'm always happy about that. And so here's West Side Story. Oh, and it's on the vibraphone, which is this keyboard instrument right here. It's kind of like a marimba, except it's made of metal instead of wood, and it has a pedal, so it sustains just like a piano would. Okay, those are the 3 excerpts.
Thanks, Stefan. No, that's fun. Oh, I love that Bernstein excerpt.
Yeah.
It is so cool.
It's so cool.
Yeah, and I have never heard an etude on the snare drum before, so
Yes.
thank you for that.
No
And Bach on the marimba. It was a great tour.
Yeah. Well, the marimba wasn't invented until a lot after Bach, so if we want to play his music, we have to transcribe.
Yep, but as many instrumentalists do, Bach is good on anything. Yeah,
I think it's universal. Yes.
Yeah. Now, do you have any kind of unusual or things that we might not necessarily see on stage? Those sorts of instruments.
Yes, I have some interesting instruments to show you. I'll be right back. I'll grab them. 1 second.
Actually, while Stefan's doing that, I have my own to show. I've got a bow here, and this is a waterphone, and it's used a lot in movies because it's so creepy. Wow. There we go.
That's the iconic horror soundtrack moment right there.
No kidding. We've all heard that in so many movies, but for me, it's effective every time. I love it. I love taking the waterphone to schools when I visit schools because the kids just eat it up, and they get sort of scared by the sound.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I'm sure they recognize it from films they've seen.
Yeah, especially the older ones. Yeah, the little ones haven't watched those horror.
I haven't watched the horror films yet.
No, they aren't in cartoons. No,
I haven't really watched them either, to be honest.
So what have you got to show us?
Okay, the first instrument I have is one that I think everyone has seen it, but not up close. It's called the whip, and it looks like this. And what you do, this is the one where you go like this, and you hit it together. And this is the instrument that's in Sleigh Ride. When we do the Christmas concert every year, we always play Sleigh Ride because we love that piece so much. I can't get enough of it. Leroy Anderson, Sleigh Ride, it's just the best. We always end I think we pretty much always end the concert with it. And it's always Jean Normand up at the timpani doing the whip when you get to that part. And all it is 2 pieces of wood, basically, with a hinge at the bottom. And you just hit them together. It makes the perfect whip sound. It's unbelievably loud. It's just incredible when you play it at the full volume. To be next to it, you have to plug your ears for sure. And the next instrument I'm going to show you is the duck call. This is a real duck call. I'm sure it's from Canadian Tire or something like that. And you just make a duck sound like this. And one might think it's not really a percussion instrument. Why are you showing us this? And the reason is that for some reason, a lot of composers use it in their music. This past Christmas, I did a concert with a duck call in it. And I think it was a Christmas concert. And I really, I can't remember why. I think it had a nature theme or something, but it's a great instrument. It's a really good effect, and the audience always laughs, basically. So if you want a comedy element in your music, just use duck call. The percussionist will probably have one. And the last interesting instrument I have is this metal washboard tie. And the washboard, you would wear it like this, and you scrape it with a metal object like this little piece of metal I have. And you can get a washboard effect, which is kind of a, I guess, a traditional folk kind of instrument, maybe a bluegrass thing or something like that. But I actually wore this to my grade 8 graduation, and I bought it for that, but now I use it as a percussion instrument when it's needed. So if you want to write for washboard tie, I have one.
Good to know.
Yeah, if you ever need.
A true percussionist. You're already on your way in grade 8.
Yeah, that's what I said. I wanted to. I already decided. Maybe that was the point that I truly decided my career right there when I bought the washboard tie. Yeah.
That's good. Well, thanks for that tour. That was very nice. And, nice to see a percussion studio. A home percussion studio. That's
and I have lots more instruments around here. It's hard to see it a little bit, but the basement is just filled with them. It's crazy. It's almost too much, but it can never really be too much. It's okay.
Yeah. I've been in a number of percussionists' houses, and it's generally the basement.
Yes, the basement.
An extra room with instruments floor to ceiling.
Absolutely.
Storage must be an issue. Yeah.
And then the sticks are a whole other thing. Just boxes of sticks and mallets and things. It's crazy.
Right.
Yes.
Now, we have a great question for you from Christina Volpini, who is our HPO Marketing and Communications Manager. And Christina is also a composer.
Yes,
she asks, how do you keep track of where you are in your music when you're running from one instrument to another during a piece?
Right.
You practice this. I'm fascinated by this because I've often watched you and other percussionists running around and getting nervous, and I'm nervous for you. How do you find your place?
Oh boy, yeah. This goes slightly along with the question of how do you deal with not having the instrument to practice on before the concert. This is another problem that we have sometimes because we have to change instruments very quickly sometimes, or just not too quickly. But we have to have more than one sheet of music and have a whole plan set up. So it really comes down to planning and choreography. It's kind of like a dance, and sometimes I even choreograph it to the beat when I like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now move over here. And then I go over to a different instrument, and I'll take my music with me, put it on there, and then keep counting. And I'm counting bars the whole time.
Right.
And hopefully I can make it with no problems. I count bars on my fingers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, because we have sections of our fingers, 2, 3, 4, and that helps me to keep the count. Otherwise, I'd be very distracted and probably lose count. The other thing we do is we rely sometimes on the conductor to help us get back in if we're lost, which does happen. I'm going to be completely honest. It's not like we're perfect at counting. At least I'm not. And the universal sign for a conductor to help you is to be ready to play and be staring helplessly at them. And it looks like you're ready to play, but they know just point when you're going to play.
Right.
So I've had conductors save me many times with that way, and that's part of the part of the whole experience because that's their conductors. Part of their job is to cue us, and it's for that reason that they do it. So we're really sure when we're coming in. Because I can be sure that I need to play in about 4 bars approximately. But if there's stuff happening around me, like there's all kinds of crazy stuff, with people playing instruments and other percussionists running around, I might lose the count by maybe 1 beat or something, or just not quite have the right beat, even though I know basically when to play. And so the conductor just helps to cue, and then it's like, okay, now we're back, and very precise that way. So I love conductors who, you know, when conductors help us in that way, it's really great. It's like a team effort.
Right, right. And I, as a composer, I'm aware of it, and so I try to write cues in before.
Yeah.
You
Oh yeah, the cues are very good. Thank you.
Yeah. So and I think more and more in orchestra, I mean, the more I sort of live in the orchestral world, the more cues I write. Because I realize there's never really enough rehearsal time.
Right.
And as long as you can make sure that everyone knows where they are, that certainly helps a lot. So we have a question here submitted in advance from Brandon Walker, who is another composer. So this is coming from that perspective.
Yes.
And he asks, what are your thoughts on using a drum kit in an orchestral setting to cover multiple instruments, i.e. snare drum, toms, bass drum, mounted cymbal? Is this frowned upon or acceptable?
That's a great question. There's okay, well, yeah. It depends on how, if you want the pretentious answer, you have to say that, no, it's unacceptable. And, you can only use the exact instruments that would be, part of, in the period that the piece was written and that kind of thing. But we know that in the real world, of course, we should use the drum set in the orchestra. I've done it so many times, and I think it sounds fantastic, even though it sounds a little bit different from the ideal instruments that we would normally have. I think it's fantastic. We can cover essentially the entire percussion section in one drum set. I think that's probably where the drum set even originated from, was from the marching band, where we have the bass drum, and we use the foot pedal for that. And the hi-hat, which is just the crack cymbals, but on a stand now that you play with your feet. So you have the bass drum and cymbals covered. And then we have a snare drum right in front of us that we use with just 2 hands like normal. And you can also have some other cymbals and other auxiliary percussionists, and it can all be done by one person. And so in cases where isn't the budget to hire a full percussion section, or if we don't have enough instruments or anything like that, I've often done that, and I love it. It's a lot of fun, and I think it sounds great also. So I don't have any problem with it whatsoever. I just love music. So if I can make music somehow, I will.
Yeah. Oh, and that's good to hear about the snare drum. I've used it once in an orchestral piece, but it was actually asked for. But it is really, really useful. I mean, people may also not realize how expensive it is to have percussion on the show. And a lot of the time it's many players, and one player might say, I can't do all this myself. We need to hire another percussionist. I know people that are programming works for orchestras, like music directors. And their team, they're going to be looking at the size of the percussion, how many players, how many instruments. As well, the orchestra probably has to rent instruments. And now this brings us to the discussion of cartage as well.
Yes.
There's these hidden costs in percussion. What is cartage? And is it really a big deal? How much work is it?
Yeah. Cartage is when the percussionist brings their own instruments. It's usually larger instruments, like if I were to bring this marimba here to a rehearsal, or the vibraphone back there or something. We usually charge a bit extra to do that, and it's because it's a lot of work to move it. It takes hours and hours to set it up and to move it, and it's really. It often saves costs to have the percussionist bring their own instruments. Otherwise, you'd have to pay for rental and for them to deliver it and that kind of thing. But yes, cartage is a big deal, and we appreciate it when contractors help us out with that, and it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
We don't mind doing it though, because we often like to play on our own instruments.
Of course,
But,
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. You know, percussion is by far the most has the most stuff to bring. So we often make the joke that we wish we had played, you know, the oboe or the piccolo or something. But it's really not true. We don't mind it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a huge thing to imagine, you know, carrying all of your instruments. But I
Yeah.
sympathize a little bit in that I play piano, and
Yeah.
through the HPO, I end up playing piano at a lot of our community partners, and I never know what I'm going to get. You know, sometimes
Right.
the piano is really out of tune.
Everybody
Sometimes
has a
something
piano.
doesn't work. Yeah, exactly. Everyone has a piano, and they say, "Oh, it's good, it's good." So yes,
That's the opposite problem, basically, but it's similar. Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
and I just long to, you know, be able to bring my own instrument that, you know, at
You
least
just
that is
encourage,
reliable.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
right.
there it is. There it is.
That's right.
Now, aside from playing with the HPO, I know that you're also a coach for the youth orchestra for the
Yes.
HPYO. Can you tell us about that?
I love my HPYO students. They're fantastic. They're actually mostly my own students. They
Oh,
come over and I teach them, and right over here. And somehow, I don't know how it happened, but almost all of the students in the HPYO are now my students. Maybe there's one that isn't. I don't remember.
word got around, I guess.
Yeah, word got around, so it just happened, and now it's great because I teach them every week. We work on snare drum, and we work on our auxiliary percussion instruments and on keyboard. I make sure they're good keyboard sight readers so that they can handle the keyboard parts,
Yeah.
which most percussionists avoid early on. And but then when I go to coach the HPYO, it's like all my students are there, and it's really fun. And they all know how I approach music already, and so it's really easy to work with them. And we always have a good time. It's really fun. I love it.
I imagine that our annual holiday concert is
Oh,
very
the
fun for
holiday.
you because you're on stage with the HPYO. So,
It's kind of
yeah,
like a party, but we do take it seriously, basically. But it's kind of like a family reunion because they usually don't meet each other except at the HBYO. So it's where all my students hang out.
yeah, that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah.
Now, let's switch gears here and get to know a little bit more about what you do aside from being a percussionist. Now, a few
Oh,
years ago, I was quite surprised to learn that you were back in school.
yeah.
Can you tell us about that? What did
Can't stay away
you
from
do
school.
and why?
Yeah. Yeah, a few years ago, this was in 2017. This is after I'd been, playing with the HPO for a few years, and I was already, established as a percussionist. I got an idea to expand kind of what I was doing in music, and which was to learn how to compose for in an electronic kind of music setting, like create music on the computer, basically. And that's how the true commercial music industry works. The one where it's connected with media usually, or the one where pop music is made, film composers, that kind of thing. And so I found a program at Sheridan College called Massive, and it stands for Music for Screen, Stage, and Interactive Visual Environments, which it just means video games, basically. And it's a program where they taught us the technical skills of how to be an audio engineer, and also the musical skills of how to be a composer, and also just the background of all media related music, and the history of it, and how to write musical theater songs. And they basically put us in to the Sheridan campus and kind of set us free, and we started to collaborate with the animation school that they have there. They have a fantastic animation program. Some of the animators go on to work for Pixar and other studios like that. And we got to compose music for their student animation films, which was very exciting. And then they were screened on Industry Day, where the industry representatives from the animation world came and saw it, and they heard our music. And we also got to collaborate with the musical theater school at Sheridan, and we wrote songs for them, and they sang our songs, and we recorded them in the recording studio. And we collaborated with the film and TV departments, and I was able to compose music for documentaries and that kind of thing, and dramatic films and that type of thing. So I was able to do a lot in that 1 year, and it really took me out of just the percussion kind of world that I had been in prior to that, and it opened up the composing world and even more so the just music production world, basically, and sound production also, like sound effects and that kind of thing.
It sounds like a really rich program.
It was fantastic. Yeah, I got it in the first year that it was being offered, and it was really exciting to be part of it.
Yeah. Now, actually, I teach composition at University of Toronto, and a good number of my students have collaborated with that Sheridan Anime program. So I've seen many shorts over the years.
Yeah, that's right.
Making the music for it and bringing in the sketches of the animation first before it's complete, and mapping it out. It's really fun.
It's really fun. Yeah.
Let's look at yours. This is Memory, I believe. Yes.
Memory. Yeah. This is when I worked on. Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Let's watch it.
Okay.
This is your music. That's lovely.
Thank you.
Did your filmmaker give you an idea of a direction to take?
Yes, actually, what they gave me was they had a temp score already in the It's the issue of every composer who's done this before. It's basically they picked a temporary music track from an existing piece, and in the case she picked I think Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony, or a movement from the Sixth or the Fourth Symphony. I can't remember which one, but it was just a Tchaikovsky orchestral piece at the beginning, and they said, okay, they want music to sound kind of like this, but they don't want to use the exact Tchaikovsky one. They want something to be customized and fit perfectly with their film. And so I took the Tchaikovsky music and I tried to basically copy it, just the general sound. And I tried to think of what she liked about that music and try to add that to my score. And so I showed her the music, and then we kind of went back and forth about any changes that she wanted. And then at the end, once we decided that she liked the score, and I had made a temporary version with virtual instruments, just computerized sounds. After that, I created parts for real musicians, and we went into the recording studio, and we hired a string quartet, and some of the players from that I think are watching right now, actually, and because some of them are HPO people who play with the HPO, and we had amazing string players, come to the recording studio and do the final recording of the music. And that's what you just heard in the film.
Yeah, it makes such a difference to have real players rather than MIDI. Yeah.
rare.
For you, I've seen a number of those shorts that have just used MIDI, so it's really nice to see it done right.
Yeah.
Now, you touched on Temp Tracks there, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But first, I'd like to look at another video you did, because I assume that in learning to write film music, part of the process is taking a movie and making your own music for it, your own soundtrack.
Yes.
Did you do that?
Yes, that's what I think we're about to see. One from Blade Runner, is that right?
Okay, yeah, let's do it. So
yeah.
this is the new Blade Runner movie with your music.
Yes. Wow.
That was exciting.
That was exciting. Yeah. When I compose music for that kind of thing, it always stresses me out while I'm doing it. So I have to like leave the room, take a breather, and go back if it's a scary or action scene or something.
Yeah, it helps to have a new perspective too.
Yeah, I'm very
the whole thing.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. So, you know, I guess early on, then you learn how to deal with temp tracks, because that's essentially what you just did there. You took the score of Blade Runner and made your own version of it.
Exactly. Yeah, I have a little demo reel. It's essentially a demo of my work, and I have one of Blade Runner, and then one of Legally Blonde, and one of Jason Bourne. And the reason I did those was to show that I can take the score that was in the film and make music that sounds really close to it and has the same mood and same instrument palette, but doesn't infringe on any copyrights, basically.
Yeah.
And, that's the main thing that we're looking for.
Right.
But it really follows the music that's in the film very closely.
Yep. And that is the job, right? When you're given a temp track. Now, for those of you watching, if you'd like to see some other excerpts, some other movie clips that Stefan has done, you can look at his website, stefankitai.com, and there are a number of things on there to watch and listen to. So I'm quite fascinated by the temp track. Of course, we have the original temp track fiasco, which was 2001: A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick's film, where he actually put in all classical pieces. And the idea, as you know, but just for our listeners' sake, the idea is that the piece can't be screened by the executives without having music in there. They need that emotional content in there. And so, existing pieces are put in. And when Kubrick did this, he happened to use all classical pieces. Then he hired Alex North to write a score. And Alex North kind of did his own thing. Kubrick thought he didn't follow the temp track. And so Kubrick used his, the original music, the original classical pieces. And Alex North didn't even know this. He showed up at this screening expecting to hear his own music, and it wasn't there. So this is the original temp track fiasco. Yes. We can hear a lot of classical music sort of foundation in contemporary film score writing. And that's because a lot of the time there could be a classical temp track. So if we think about the Imperial March from Star Wars, you know, if you listen to Mars from the planets, you will hear the connection.
Yes.
Definitely.
Definitely Holst was a big influence on film music in general.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting that film composers have to deal with this, and people probably might not be aware that film composers generally come into the project pretty late in the game, right?
Yes.
Once the editing is done, and then snap, they need the film score done in a few weeks, and please just match the temp track, because we've now become so attached to that temp track, even though it might not be the ideal thing.
Oh boy. Yes, I had an experience with this actually at Sheridan when I was working with an animator, and she had put in this music which she loved in her animation, and she asked me to write original music for it, so I did, and I tried to copy the mood of it as closely as I could, but it did sound a little bit different, of course, as you know, you can't copy it absolutely perfectly.
No. And you shouldn't.
And you didn't try to, yeah. Why would you?
Still have your own voice. Too.
But anyway, and she, you know, we had established that I was going to do this, and I had made it fit perfectly with the film. That it was, I highlighted points of the film that she, you know, wanted, and you know, little comedy elements in the film. You know, I was able to bring them out because I was timing the music perfectly with her film, and the temp music that she had didn't really fit with the film well at all. It was really not even close. So you know, from at least from my perspective, my music fit the film much better, and it provided the same effect as her music. But she ended up actually deciding to go with her temp music.
Oh.
She said, "I love this music so much, I can't imagine the film without it."
Yep.
And it was like, oh my goodness, that's okay, that's fine, but
yep. Oh gosh, it's heartbreaking after you put the work in.
Yeah. So I ended up actually taking that music and using it for something else, and it worked.
Oh, that's good.
But it was frustrating.
Yeah.
I think the film turned out worse for it, to be honest, and I feel like directors should really be careful of that.
Yeah. Well, you know, there are a lot of a number of film composers that think that Kubrick's choices were bad, that Alex North's score should have been the way to go, and you can actually see
I would be surprised.
a film with Alex North's music on it.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, just search for it in Google. You can find it. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
And you bring up an interesting point there in what you just said, in that the temp music wasn't well suited. And this is another problem of temp tracks, is that they're chosen generally by the director, who may not have you know, a vast musical vocabulary.
Right.
You know, a few years ago, I heard our Canadian film score celebrity Michael Dana talk.
Yes.
And he was just talking about how crippling having a temp track is. And before, you know, in the earlier part of his career, he could, you know, pay attention to classical pieces that were used and identify those. But as time goes on, the directors know the music of other films. So instead of putting classical pieces in, they're putting in temp tracks by other film composers, and then it gets more and more insular. Yeah. And Michael Dana was commenting that it drives him crazy when he hears his own music as a temp track. He knows it's there. So it's copied. It's an interesting kind of dirty little secret of the film world.
Yeah, I think I don't know this for sure, but if you watch, you know, the big Hollywood films that are coming out, probably basically all of the music sounds the exact same as all the other big Hollywood films. And it's because of the cycle of temp music referencing existing temp music.
You know, there's a great composer round table on YouTube, and it's got composers like Michael Dana and Danny Elfman talking about using a temp track and how crippling that is. So we'll share that link. It's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
If I work with a director, I would really hope that they, you know, are open to some new ideas about the music, and you know, not too just, you know, keen on using their temp music. But
exactly. Now we just have a few minutes left with you, Stefan, and I'd like to get an idea of a couple of other things you do. You mentioned that you have done some audio engineering study. I mean, are you working in that field?
Yes, I've done quite a bit of audio engineering. What happened was when I was at Sheridan, they introduced us to the recording studio, and it's a very technical world that's completely different from anything that most musicians have ever seen, unless they're specifically in audio engineering. There's all kinds of electronics and microphones and cables everywhere and computers and flashing lights. It's crazy. And very exciting, though. The first time I was in the recording studio, I was just amazed by how unique it was. It was amazing. Anyway, they introduced us to that, and also to the mixing world, where the mixing is different from recording, because you take your recorded material and it's like giving it the final polish, kind of, and refining it so that it's ready for to be published, essentially, and to be put out on the radio or whatever.
Right.
With managing the volume of sounds and the brightness of sounds and the colors and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and now that must be a real advantage for you to be able to do all of that yourself for your own music. So you don't have to communicate any of that. It's
exactly yes. I am able to compose my own music and mix and master all of my tracks myself. And I've, because of the quarantine that's been happening, I've had quite a few requests during this time of electronic. People are making music on recorded now online and posting it online, so I've had some mixing requests since then, quite a few.
And I understand you're even trying your hand at pop music.
Yes, this is a new project that I have coming out. I haven't released anything officially yet, but I'm starting to write pop songs in the electronic dance music style.
Yeah,
which is most of the songs you hear on the radio now.
Right.
And I'm trying to learn how to copy all of those sounds and to make my own sounds and make my own music.
Yeah, well, we'll keep an eye on your website for some of those pop songs.
That's right. You can share the link to the pop song page if you want.
Okay, we'll share the link. That's great. Everybody can hear Stefan's venture into the pop world.
Yeah. From tango to pop music.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stefan. This has been great. It's been great to get to know you more than the happy triangle player, and also to learn just what you're doing in varied work across music. So thank you.
Right. It's always exciting, and thanks for having me. It was super fun to share everything.
Wonderful. This has been great. Yeah. So for those of you watching, please join us again next week, same time, same place, Wednesday at noon. And next week will be a composer fest. So we have our own Christina Volpini, who is marketing and communications manager at the HPO, who also juggles a career as a composer. So we'll learn about that. And we'll also be joined by our HPO Composer Fellows, Luis Ramirez and Andrew Clark. So we'll get to hear some of their music, hear what they've been up to, and see what they've been up to in this quarantine time, which is really, really amazing. And also learn what it's been like for them to be part of our fellowship program. So along with me, that makes 4 composers on next week. So that's definitely...
You can talk about temp music again.
Yep, that's right. Well,
it'll always come up again. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time. And thanks again, Stefan.
See you. Hopefully we'll have a conference soon. Bye-bye.